Hi everyone. So you know I have bees, but did you know I also have chickens? You probably actually did because you can hear them in the background of everything. We've had chickens since I was a kid, and one of my first jobs was to go out and collect the chicken eggs. Originally, I was planning on incubating new chickens from the eggs from our old chickens, but we need fresh blood in the gene pool, as they say, so we went out and we got chickens from TSC. Now, you might think that this is a Tim Hortons donut box, but it is not. Do not mistake your chickens for Timbits. Now, life as a baby chick is very stressful, so they'll usually be very tired and very stressed. They are only a couple days old at this point, and they've just gotten in from being shipped to the store. Now, if you want, you can check around with other places in your area that sell chickens, and you can sort of shop for the breed of chicken that you're most interested in getting. Like, for instance, our local mill had Brahmas, which are pretty cool looking, but we didn't decide to get those. In our experience, it also was a good idea to call ahead to ask when the chickens were actually going to arrive. TSC had a bunch of signs posted said they were going to arrive on a certain date, but they didn't. They ended up having to be pushed back due to inclement weather, which threatens the safe shipping of these chickens. Now, before you pick up your chicks, it is very important to have their home already set up. They need to be placed immediately from the box into their home. They shouldn't be sitting around anywhere. So what you can see I'm doing right here is I'm cleaning one set of water and one set of feeder for them, just using a bleach and water solution and scrubbing it since these are old and they've been sitting around, so that they have a food and water container all nice and clean and set up for them. I'm also cleaning out an oil container. The good thing about this is that it's metal, so when you go ahead and you use your heaters for your chickens, which you will have to use, there's no danger of this container being caught on fire. Do not use cardboard boxes because the heater will set them on fire. There's also this metal mesh cover that I'm using. The cover is really important for two reasons. One, it prevents the chickens from possibly being able to climb out. But more importantly than that at this stage, it prevents other animals from getting in. They're very small. We have other birds. We have mice, different sort of rodents around that would love to eat your chickens. So it's just an extra layer of protection to keep those animals out and your chickens safe. So their home is in the chicken coop in the same building as the other chickens, but they're in sort of the entry area so the other chickens can't get into them. I am putting these stones down. This is where I'm going to set the food and water container. It's to keep it up off of the sawdust bedding that I have here so that the chickens aren't going to scratch in all the bedding into their food and water, which is just going to waste their food and water, and it's going to gum it up and get everything wet. So it's to keep it up to prevent them from messing things up so badly. The other things you're going to need to get is medicated chick feed. This is important because this basically acts as their medication as they're growing up, the way you get shots when you're little to prevent disease and illness. So go ahead and get them a bag for this. What I did is I just fed them the whole 50-pound bag, and when they were out, then they got switched over to laying mash, but they need to start on a medicated chick starter. This is going to be the best thing for them. The other thing you can get is electrolyte mixtures for their water. It isn't strictly necessary because I know for the first couple weeks here I didn't do that, but eventually I did, and basically it's a little powder packet that you put in their water. It's kind of like a Gatorade packet, and then they just drink that, and the goal with that is to help them stay more hydrated. Now, giving them food and water can be a little bit tricky because they are going to want to play with it. So there's this sort of sweet spot, especially when you give them water, between having enough water for them to drink and quench their thirst and having too much water that they end up just playing with it and making a huge mess. So it might take you a couple days to kind of tweak that volume. They should still have water, by the end of it when you're going to go change it out, but also you shouldn't have maybe like a half gallon spilled all over their chicken pen, because they're just gonna want to play with it. That's what they do. And they're gonna poop everywhere, so it's important to keep them clean. So change out the bedding as at least once a day, I think is good. And make sure you're cleaning out stuff from their water when you're changing it, so they're not, drinking their own poo so much. But they're just gonna poop and everything. They're gonna play in everything. Everything's gonna be a mess in just a few hours. So right now they're all cuddling up underneath the heating lamp. You're gonna wanna keep your chickens pretty warm. I'm talking about 90 degrees Fahrenheit over the next week. You can slowly drop the temperature, but never go below 70. They need to be really warm. The good thing about this is that eventually you can sort of tell if they're too hot or too cold, especially when they start to get feathers. It's gonna be too hot under this heating lamp. So if they're too cold, they'll do what they're doing now. They're not cold right now, they're mostly just scared. They'll huddle up really close to each other under the heating lamp. They're trying to get warm. If it becomes too hot, that you notice over the next couple weeks that they start to hide on the other side of the container, then they're too hot. So maybe you can raise the heat lamp higher above their container to help cool the temperature down for them. But always watch the temperature. It's really convenient just to keep a thermometer on the ground underneath the heat lamp so you can monitor how hot it is. So it's also important to place the heater generally on one side of the container and not encompassing the whole thing. That way they have the option to escape the heat and cool down so they don't get overheated, because that's also another issue. You don't want them to get too cold and you don't want them to get overheated. Also here what I'm doing is placing the water on the other side of that heater. Again, just to keep it cool, so that's another cool option for them, and the water doesn't get hot, because these summer days are gonna get hot. Now I can observe here that they've already figured out where the food and water is, and this is good, and not terribly surprising that they've figured this out already, because this is a very similar setup to what they had at TSC. Just make sure they're eating and drinking. You can help them out and sort of dip their beaks in the water to say, oh, this is where the water is. But generally, they'll figure it out because, well, this is what they were raised on, so they recognize it pretty quickly. Or at the very least, they're exploring it and finding out that they can put it in their mouths. That's probably more likely. Now, you might be wondering what kind of chickens we got. So you can actually still tell what types these are. Sometimes you can't tell the types apart too well when they're kids, and it's easier when they fully feather out. But the two tan ones, those are the Buff Orpingtons, and the all black ones, meaning not the ones with the dots on their head, those are Marins. And then the ones that are black with dots on their head, those are the Barred Rock. So we got 5 Marins, 3 Barred Rock, and 2 Buff Orpingtons for a total of 10. Now, there's no great real reason for this. This is mostly just what TAC had, and my mom likes to get chickens based on what color eggs they're going to lay. So these guys are mostly going to be dark brown and light brown egg layers. Now, you might notice when you're picking out your chickens that the signs will say something like straight run or pullet. Pullet means those chickens are guaranteed to be hens. That's good if you're really looking for egg production. When you do straight run, those are non-guaranteed. It's a mix of male, female. They just put them all together. What I noticed at TSC, the pullets tend to run you more money because the hens are really the most valuable chicken to a lot of people. And the straight runs will be slightly cheaper, but that does also depend on breed. So, if I remember correctly, the Barred Rock were pullets, the Marins were straight runs, and the Buff Orpingtons were straight runs. So, this means we could have hens or roosters. You can get your chickens professionally sexed at this age, and that's really the best way to tell, is to have a professional do it, because it is very difficult for someone to just tell. But we don't bother with that. I'm just going to wait until they feather out and just look at their physical characteristics to see how many roosters I will end up having. So when they got slightly older, maybe this was about a week or so later, I built them this silly little roost out of bamboo. It's just bamboo pieces shoved in other bamboo pieces to make a roost. They don't particularly want to roost right now. They're not showing signs of that. If they start climbing on their food or water container, then that might mean they are wanting to roost. They usually start to do that when they're older. But this was just a silly little thing that they could have, and they mostly just jumped on it and jumped over it. It's not necessary, but there it is. Now this is about 10 or 12 weeks later. As you can see at this point, they are feathered. So they're in a larger area where they can run around inside, and they can go outside at this point once they're feathered. They are on laying mash, and they are on just regular water. They just have a bigger water container now to accommodate for their bigger size, and they get fed still once a day, and they get about a scoop of that layer's mash. And here they are, they have figured out how to roost on the one bar, and you can see the destroyed bamboo roost I made them, because now they're huge and they destroy things. So there they are, all lined up on their roost. They figured it out. Now you could see their food hanger hanging off of this roost in an earlier picture, and that was an attempt to keep the mice out, but that didn't work because I have totally just seen the mice jump from the pole into the food container and eat the food anyway. So yeah, the mice really love chickens because it's free food and water. What more could they need? So we keep our big bags of food in metal trash cans. They basically have a lid on top that, of course, mice can't open. And they're metal, so mice can't chew through it. We did have a plastic container with a lid that we'd put food in, but the mice chewed a hole through it. So I would recommend getting something metal to keep them out of your big bags of food. Otherwise, they will live in there, they will eat it, and they will crap in it. Keep the mice out as much as you can. And if you're lucky, you might be blessed enough to witness a chicken eating a mouse. It happens. It's terrifying. They kind of shove it down their throat a way a snake would eat it because they don't have teeth. And it makes you think differently about your chickens. So if you notice here, my chickens aren't really afraid of me. They don't really care that I'm in their space. They're not trying to get away from me. In fact, they're kind of curious about me. And when I sit down and I spend time with them, they'll peck me, which I don't care about because that's how they discover their world. If you notice your chickens aren't hanging out with you if they're scared, they're trying to be on the other side away from you, then that's probably because you didn't spend enough time with them as they were growing up. And so you're just going to have to put in time with them. You're going to have to spend some time with them, and then they'll generally be more friendly. But chickens aren't like dogs or whatever. You can't really pet them or hold them. You can, but you have to just spend that much more time with them.
This is gonna be my baby chickie's first time outside. I just gotta take down that chicken wire. I put it there so they could have a little window. But now they are definitely big enough to be let outside. And I wanted to give some time for some green to grow in here because, well, yeah, So they have something fun to play with, but it's been really hard to grow anything in here. It's been so dry. Hey, babies! Here's our first contestant outside. Come on, let's go. Come on. Come on, honeys. There you go.
So from a few weeks from here, I can definitely tell that I have one buff Orpington rooster and one Marin rooster. They are huge compared to the other chickens, and their tail feathers will flop over and they'll get these big wattles and they'll start growing. So you'll know. So once they are fully feathered and you've let them outside, that's pretty much all you have to do for them. They will start laying usually around 18 to 20 weeks. It depends. Mine started laying around their 19th week. So it was a while. It wasn't until it started to get cold outside. So at this point, you just make sure that they have nest boxes, and it's important to have a nest box that's fairly their size, so about a foot by a foot, and then maybe 10 inches deep or something, because they like to feel enclosed when they lay an egg. They prefer that to any other way. So when they're outside, you can see they've started digging holes to take dirt baths in. This is what they do. They are very silly. It is fun to watch them. They have a lot of fun outside. They enjoy being outside. In fact, it is 30 degrees outside at night right now, and they like to sit on these perches that are outside and sleep all night in 30-degree weather. That is completely up to them. I think it's funny. I think they're silly. I think they're cute. And I'm going to really enjoy watching them grow up and grow old. So thank you for watching, and I hope you have fun raising your own baby chicks.